Welcome to my show. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have you sit up straight. And I'm going to invite you. Gonzalo? Did you want me to the first side? Can I get the music back? No, not my. All right, now we'll get serious. All right, I'd like to invite you to sit up straight in your chair. And we're going to do a little time travel for only about a minute. And if you feel comfortable with this, I'd like you to close your eyes. And I'd like to take you back, for some of you way back, to the time when you were 13 years old. And during that time, try to remember maybe the way you wore your hair, some of the clothes you chose, your friends. Maybe think a little bit about some of the feelings that you had about yourself. If you were popular, or if you had a crush on someone, or how you felt about your family. And then maybe call to mind any particular adults who guided you during that time in your life, who were positively influential in some way. Could have been a teacher or a relative, somebody who was kind of like a role model. I'd like you, as the adult you, to just give thanks to your younger you for coming present today, and to hold on to your younger self during this presentation to help you get a better feeling about where we're going. So you can take a deep breath, and I'll bring you back to the class. Thank you for going on that journey with me. At break time, you can share what you were and all that stuff. And I'm sure it was an adventure to be there. My presentation today is called Release, Sweat, and Embrace, Reflections of a Rites of Passage Experience. It's my first qualitative research case study. And I'll be doing it in a sequence, a scholarly sequence of going through the introduction, literature review, my methods, results, discussion. So, rites of passage. The Encyclopedia of World Problems and Human Potential declares that the current lack of rites of passage is a global problem. And what that means is the absence of a rites of passage leads to a serious breakdown in the process of maturing. I'm sure that you see the effects of that. I want you to really take that first part in. Serious breakdown in the process of maturing. Young people are unable to participate in society in a creative manner because societal structures no longer consider it their responsibility to intentionally establish the necessary marks of passing from one age-related social role to another, such as a child to a youth to an adult to an elder. The result is that society has no clear expectation of how people should participate in these roles, and therefore individuals do not know what is required by society. So with that, some of the current social concerns that I think we all see, but is here backed up by research, is that the social health of the United States appears to be declining. We see all kinds of social ills. It's really almost painful to watch the news, or things that we tolerate now, like kids being abducted and shootings at schools. I mean, it's sort of becoming, we're desensitizing, it's becoming the norm. Researchers are recognizing the impact of trends to a phenomenon they're calling extended adolescence. So whereas adolescence in the 1920s might be that you go through a very short amount of time and then you become an adult with adult responsibilities and family, there's this extended amount of youth, extended amount of time when you're reflecting on yourself. So consequently, immaturity, there's too much, it's like there's too long of a period of time of focusing on self. And so a lot of what we're experiencing in society is kind of self-centeredness, out of control. A public agenda reported that many Americans believe youth are not learning values. Part of that is being in a blended society. We don't always agree on our values. And definitely if we throw into their marketing and a consumer-oriented, sex-crazed, how can I get you to think that everything is wrong and kind of society, there are no real values. There's a lot of limitations to even talking about them. A survey on school crime reported that bullying occurs daily or at least once a week in 20.5 of the reporting primary schools and 43 primary schools, and almost half of all the reporting middle schools. And I know as a school teacher, we had to do more and more and more of our curriculum was being taken into doing management, basic management of issues. And to be honest, sometimes being in a middle school and a high school was scary. Honestly scary, not just for the kids, but for the teachers also. You were sort of almost afraid at some point to discipline, what the consequences can be to yourself. ABC primetime, just recently, this is great, I was watching TV, and they put this, I was doing research, yes, and they report on the cheating crisis. And one of the things that really stood out to me is there was something like they interviewed over 7,000 teachers, and more than 40% said that they have looked the other way when it comes to cheating, just because it's too big of a problem to even address. That's both in high school and college. And then the kids, when they were being interviewed, they were saying, well, there's tremendous pressure to do this, get good grades, you can't even move forward, so there's this huge competition modality that's entrenched. It's not even about learning anymore. It's about competing. Yeah. So, there's the problem. Let's move forward. My personal experience is that maturity does not automatically come with adulthood. It's not like, well, guess what, you're 21. You're grown up. Woohoo! No. The popular notion that maturity means to be fully developed misses the most important part of the process, which is that work is involved. Yeah. My own rites of passage has led to my life passion. So I began very early really seeking out my own spiritual path, my own call in this world. And it always brought me to kids, working with teens, and really helping them to find their spiritual center. And it was almost like teaching was the excuse to get to kids, because that was more important. As a mentor, oh, you don't need to know that. I believe that there's this is important. I believe that there is a precious window in time in the soul's journey, right around puberty, where tremendous advances and shift can happen. If there's the right mentor, the right community, the right circumstances, I believe a huge shift can be made in spiritual development. And I've seen it happen, and I've been part of that. So that's part of my experience, and my vision of social advocacy is getting more adults to be adults, who want to be models, who, I guess the word that I'm really passionate about right now is the desire to want to bring a wisdom way to our youth. So that's my campaign, and you guys can sign up afterwards. All right. Background: as an educator, beginning my transformative journey, which is now. So I come from years of being in the classroom. I'm transforming to becoming a scholar. So I chose as my first qualitative research study to investigate the rites of passage experiences that I've already led with youth. And I was curious to understand what remained, because I've been doing this long enough now that the first group that I took through is actually the age now that I was when I took them through it. And I'm not going to tell you that age because then you start doing the math. The stage will serve as a launching pad for developing effective, transformative, contemporary rites of passage experiences. Specifically, I had a case study of 4 girls who participated in a rites of passage experience, and I just happened to, it's just the universe. I just happen to have all my notes from it, pictures from it. And I happen to keep in touch with all these girls. That's the universe showing me that this is my way, my path. The question is, how did the participants of an 8th grade contemporary rites of passage remember their experience? So, I'll briefly go over the literature review because the meat of this is the actual speaking with the girls. A rites of passage has been coined by anthropologists as having 3 stages. So you have the stage where you leave what it is that you know. So you leave the comfortable. That could be a physical leaving. It could be a changing of jobs. This process happens all the time in our lives. And then there's a threshold. Sometimes we call it the liminal stage, or the dark night of the soul, where you're not quite into the person you're becoming. You're kind of in that in-between place. It can be really uncomfortable. It's a lot of times when people go back to old behavior. My theory is that's probably why we have so many people stuck in immaturity. It's because they get to the stage of emerging into something that requires more maturity, and there's nobody there to say, this is how you walk down the hallway, this is how you develop that sense of yourself. And then the incorporation is when you come back to your community, your new way of being, with a new level of competence, a new way of contributing. And it's very powerful. It's in a lot of the myth stories, a hero's journey. The community role is in traditional cultures, in order to gain entrance to the next stage, you were guided by your older members. It was just a given. It wasn't something that had to be created. And that you had to learn responsibilities. And that was, so you're actually your rites of passage was kind of almost like a training for what you were going to need to do. And the training had to involve something that almost seemed impossible. So the more impossible, the more growth that you took on as a soul. In modern times of technological science, the disconnect between humans and their natural environment, and the breakdown of the basic family social unit, and the dehumanizing pressure of the American lifestyle have contributed to the weakening of traditional values, leaving only the superficial remnants of a rites of passage. So a superficial would be high school graduation, a wedding that costs a lot of money and everybody dresses up, but it's like, how did we prepare these young people to go out and be on their own, to make decisions, to develop into a person who could, in Hawaii we say, who can handle. Who can handle. All right, adult role models. Role models build good character education, whether a ceremony, a ritual of self-discovery. A mentor, in a lot of the literature, is a really important part of anybody developing into, it's like an apprenticeship or a mentor. Somebody developing into somebody else, if there's a role model there who can help them step into that, the journey becomes more solid, more complete. And there's feedback. It's not like it is in America, where we feel like we have to do everything on our own and figure it out ourselves, or you can go to the internet and there's where the answer is. So I'll move on from that. An authentic rites of passage. Even a single rite can divide a person's life into a before and after. what do I want to say, an embodied spiritual experience, such as a rites of passage, can provide the opportunity to transform. So an independent identity may emerge during adolescence. And, well, I already said that high school comes the closest, but it's very superficial. I think most kids that I've talked to when they graduate high school and they're going to college, it's like, party! They don't know, they gain 20 pounds. That's what the whole freshman, 20 pounds is and all that. It's just like they just don't know how to take care of themselves. Basic taking care of yourself. So the methods of my case study include 4 young ladies who experienced an 8th grade rites of passage in the summer of 1997. And this is who they've become. So I wanted to point out, the only reason I put that is because even though they grew up in a community together, it was a spiritual community, and they were best friends since almost the womb, they turned out very different. One's a full-time elementary teacher locally. One is going back to school. She studies whales. We did that in Hawaii. One of them is a professional tango dancer. And one of them is she's kind of in the business world, an analyst for a large corporation. So I did a 7-question semi-structured interview. I transcribed the interview, did thematic coding, and consolidated themes. There's the interview. In a semi-structured interview, what that means is that I'm giving questions that are leading, but they're not specific. I don't want them yes or no, or it's not like a survey where I'm searching for something. I'm using the survey, I'm using the questionnaire in order to open the realm of what is remembered. I'm just curious, that's all. So for those of you who wonder what that means, one of my favorite questions is, that I got a great answer is, why would you or would you not recommend this type of rites of passage experience to other 8th grade girls? So it was really, that was one of my favorite responses. It was just like, yes, I wish the whole world, it was like really enthusiastic. So I'll move on. All right, so this is the way the analysis works. You get your data collection and then you manage it. I did some memoing, classifying, and then doing visual representations. The results gave me 4 main themes: ritual and nature, a sense of transformation, connection to the community, and a sense of lingering values. These are themes that came from their direct dialogue. And so for those of you wondering, you kind of go like this. You send out a form that they get their consensus to interview them, you interview them, and then you have to listen to the whole thing and type it all up. Unless you pay somebody to do that for you, which I didn't do because I'm the first year. And then you get documents, and then I started to code them. So being a teacher, I have a lot of highlighters, and I just started I used the highlighting code. And I'm showing that so that, it's like, well, how do you do thematic coding? It was new for me, and I really like it. So for those of you who are wondering, a little magic thing. And these were the themes, and I tried to do them in about the shape of which themes came the most. The largest one was the connection to the community and the rituals and nature. Rituals and nature, these are quotes from the girls, from their interviews. The night of the sweat stood out for me as a really special experience. The trek down to the river and the water ceremony where we put something we wanted to let go of into the river. Receiving power animals and jumping into the pond under the stars. And when you invited us to jump off the cliff, I thought you were crazy. But after I did it, I felt very brave and alive. So did I. I was like, all right, I'm a role model and I don't swim. This is not a good thing. The intense hike down the river was pretty powerful. We weren't on a trail. We were going straight down a cliff. And we had to rely on each other. We wrote something on a piece of paper and made some sort of a boat out of leaves. I'm really glad that this is like 15 years later. I'm glad that they remember this. And we let it float down the river as our child did. I didn't want to put anything bad in the river, like plastic or dolls, so they had to write down what it would have been, and then we put the paper because I figured that. And the sweat that night was an amazing element of willpower because it was really hard. We did it all night. And sleeping outside all night long without a tent or protection helped me to feel my connection to the earth as a safe mother. So there they are. That's the sweat lodge. The very first ceremony was we asked the mothers to come and tell the birth story, except one of the dads had to come in for one of the moms. And then we made an altar of their baby pictures and their baby toys, and when they came back, those were no longer there. Then we hiked down to the river, and that's them putting their, you can see Erica's she's in a contemplative mode, kind of like, am I ready to let go of what's going to happen? And when they were ready, they could individually put their thing in the river and let it go. And then there's the cliff jump. And you had to climb up the side of the cliff, which was pretty sheer. So there was an element in a rites of passage where you face your fear physically, emotionally, spiritually. Sense of transformation. I had a sense of completion, but also a sense of moving into something new. It really opened my eyes to the possibility of a different way of being, a different way of living. Our dads also began to connect with us and to see us in a slightly different way. And I'll tell you that part's the end of the ceremony. We were recognized for crossing that threshold in our lives. I didn't identify myself so much as a woman before, but I was just a kid. I think I discovered more of who I am, especially who I am as a woman, and it was great for my parents to address me as a young woman in front of the community. So one of the pivotal moments in the rites of passage was when we were in the sweat lodge, and there was 4 women and then the 4 girls, and they all came in with their bathing suits on, and we were naked. And we were just talking about what it meant to be a woman and kind of owning your power and your sexuality and what they were about to go and face in high school. And I noticed that as they got more comfortable with it, when we took a break, they went and jumped in the pond, and when they came back, it was like symbolically they had taken off their bathing suits and joined the women in the lodge. And that was their own idea. It was like they were ready to join us as women. And I hadn't seen that coming, but I do really recognize that as a moment of transition. Connection to the community was a big part. A sense of community really strikes me. A ceremony that brings people together, to feel a part of a larger community, to feel supported by women, by people other than my immediate family. All of my friends came to the ceremony to participate, which made me feel special as well as more responsible. Having a community of, and it was a unique thing because we did live in a spiritual community, so there was people of all different ages. Having a community of older women as mentors, the reception in the community with parents, connection with girlfriends was a pretty fantastic experience. I vividly remember walking through the walkway of people with great feelings, which you'll get to see in a moment. The younger kids looked up to us, and I realized that might encourage them to want a ceremony when they graduate 8th grade. So this is what it looked like. The girls had been gone for an extended weekend, and then the community was there waiting on this pathway, and they didn't know this. And they were going to be coming into the temple to be initiated as young women after they've been through this. And the dads are over in the corner there, and Michael's playing guitar. And I just want you to look at the looks on their face, especially like they're just totally blown away, completely, authentically weirded out or blown away. And you know, look at the maturity in their face at that point. They're being honored. They're being seen. I see you. And the ceremony afterwards in the temple was the fathers. So the mothers had done the birth story. The fathers came and initiated them as women. They all had made garlands out of flowers, and which they said was their rites of passage. And they gave them to the girls as they came in. And then each of the fathers gave them something that represented them becoming a woman. So one of the fathers gave an heirloom from his grandmother. One father wrote a song. We all just, you know, cried. It was so powerful. For the whole community transformed in that ceremony. And there's the representative of the whole. Sense of lingering values. So that was one of the questions was, how has it affected you since? I was aware of a level of possibility that I'm not sure other people my age had exposure to. I had a reservoir of strength and intuition and willpower that I could tap into. This is afterwards, going into high school. They talked a little bit about, you know, the drug thing and the bus. Go to the bus and everyone's smoking pot. You know, it's like I knew better, you know. There continues to be a level of introspection, a sense of grounding. One of the things that they noticed is when they went off to high school, it wasn't so big, but then as they got into high school going into college, they started to realize that they had these skills that people in college were just starting to develop. They were just starting to do their own introspection. They were just starting to meditate. These girls had already been doing this. So they had this realization of the specialness. And that's the uniqueness. I think the exercise of saying out loud to others why a loved one is important is really valuable. And I continue to tell my friends. All right, so the discussion, findings related to the research is consistent that all participants reflected on the importance of community to help them step into a new role. It's consistent with the research that all participants mentioned the significance of being in nature. And 2 participants mentioned the element of a physical challenge. And consistent with the research, all participants mentioned the importance of having older mentors outside of their family to guide them in the role to becoming a woman. And just so you guys don't feel, cheated, I did do a rites of passage with the guys, and that was really fun. I stole their food in the middle of the night, and in the morning they had to do I said it was the bear. And in the morning they had to follow like a map, almost like a geo map. They had to practice their compass skills to go find it. And they're just running all over the place, and I'm just sitting there just laughing hysterically. Where is it? 14-year-old boy's really hungry first thing in the morning. It was great. So I have done it with girls alone, boys alone, and then together. Implications, it can be useful, of course. I'm going to, like I said, transitioning into a more mature spiritual. I guess the main thing is just really making, one of my experiences of doing this is that the kids would not have a mature home or mature community to go back to. There wasn't always that support within their peers, within their, sometimes even within, the family unit, or more likely it was, the environment of their being in high school or being in college made it really hard for them to hold on to their spiritual values. They all had gratitude, a deep relevance of being given this experience. Future research. To increase the awareness of a rites of passage experience, I would like to interview the parents of the participants. I realized after I did this, it's like, wow, how did it affect everybody? Because the parents were involved in the ceremony. In fact, the parents were actually involved somewhat before the ceremony because we discussed secretively what we might do and what their part was in it. I'd like to interview the other women who facilitated the rites of passage experience to see if they've done anything like it since, or if they were just going along with my crazy idea. And I'd like to interview, and this will be my dissertation work, to interview lots of people and go through rites of passage ceremonies, a lot of them, and write their story. And so when we did the earlier part, I'm just wondering what your puberty looked like. All right. Do I have any questions?
We've got time for one question.
I talked really fast though.
Wonderful. Just wonderful.
Yes?
I had a question. Extended period of kind of self-inquiry, or that, like, teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Plotkin suggests that that's a leap in evolution of consciousness that we haven't totally dealt with.
Yes.
So just wondering.
Thank you for bringing up that paradigm, because it's true. It could be used to our advantage spiritually. That stage of individuation, if it was truly guided, if it was, I actually think teenagers don't need to be around each other during that time. We put like thousands of them in high school. It's the worst possible scenario that we could do. Yeah. It would be the time for them to be with their mentors and elders. And then to have that extended amount of time could be profound. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, you said you did the rites of passage with female and male, and then
Together.
a mixed group. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
How was that? compared
That
to
one was it was wonderful, but it was a 2-week. We would go into a third world country and we'd do service, and all the Spanish that they knew was used up in 20 minutes. So we served in an orphanage once and in an abandoned fishing village the second time. And so in that case, there wasn't some of the things like the sweats, but there was definitely being pulled away from their parents, having to prepare ahead of time, get the money, meet with a new culture that they didn't have a language, and there was a lot of crying and bugs. And usually crying about the bugs. And it was great because there was nobody there. It was really important that they find ways of adapting authentically. I mean, it was like, boom, here you are, you're in this 8th grade. You know, you're out on your own, there's no parents, and luckily there's no phone connection either. And I think the parents went through just as much as the kids did letting them go. It was a huge trust, huge preparation. I would get them in 6th grade and we'd start preparing with fundraising and talking about it from 6th grade until the end of 8th grade. But it was very transformative.
I think everybody wants to break for lunch, huh?
I think it might be lunchtime. Thank you.